Hello and welcome to today's webinar on customizing your recipe analysis and nutrition reports. My name is Alicia and I'm joined by my colleague Ben to bring you some helpful information on creating and adjusting reports in Genesis. A little background about ESHA. ESHA Research was founded in 1981 and offers a variety of nutritional software solutions and databases to help you with food and supplement formulation and regulatory compliance. Our products include Genesis R&D Food, which Ben will be demonstrating today, Genesis R&D Supplements, the Food Processor Software, and ESHA Consulting Services, which offers expertise, training, and labeling services. Genesis R&D Food was introduced in 1991 to help users manage processes and meet federal labeling requirements. Genesis offers product formulation, nutrient analysis of formulas and menus, a variety of reports to review and present your information, and comply with U.S. and other countries' regulations. Upcoming webinars include Genesis Food version 11.5. It's an overview of updates available, or the update available, and that will be May 30th. We'll have a composite ingredients and calorie ranges for menu labeling webinar on June 13th, and a focus on Mexico labeling regulations and Genesis Mexico label features on June 27th. As always, this webinar is being recorded for access later today, as well as from the archived collection on the ESHA website. Feel free to revisit the content or share this with colleagues at any time. Please submit any questions you have during the webinar using the GoToWebinar control panel. And you don't need to wait until the end of the webinar. We have support available for immediate reply. Occasionally, we receive questions that may require a little research, so if that's the case, we will follow up as needed. Today's agenda will cover the various reports available in Genesis, setting preferences for your reports, customizing reports, exporting options, and we'll end with Q&A. And with that, I'll turn it over to Ben.
Thank you, Alicia. So the first thing I'm going to mention before we get into everything, as she mentioned, we're going to be looking at the Genesis software today. But if you do have the food processor instead, most of the reports are going to be the same. Most of the customization is going to be the same. The label display is a little bit more Genesis specific of a report. But the other types of reports will certainly be available in that application as well. And just a note, Alicia kind of mentioned it a few minutes ago, but version 11.5, I'm doing an overview on that pretty soon. That's what I'll be showing today. If you want to figure out what version of Genesis you have, I'll jump over into Genesis right now so we can take a look at how you get there. It's on the Home tab of Genesis here. If you click on About, it'll bring open a window that will show you what version of Genesis you have running. Before we get into the application, we're going to go over kind of the differences between the different types of reports. So there's 3 different types of reports in Genesis, and then of course different reports inside of those different types. So the first one we're going to look at are the standard reports. These ones are kind of more built into the application. You've got the spreadsheet label rounded, multi-column, single nutrient bar graph, calories and fats pie chart and bar graph, and the My Plate reports. So these ones are under reports when we go into preferences, and we'll certainly go into that. And like I said, a little more built into the application. The next style we've got are the Reports Plus. This one uses kind of a third-party report building software, so they're a little bit different than the standard reports, but we've got things like the label displays, the recipe cards, dairy density and protein quality reports. These used to be called, or sorry, these are still called Reports Plus. And under Preferences, you'll see Reports Plus as the preferences for those. Like I said, we'll go into preferences in a few minutes of everything that you can do with those different types of reports. But all of those are going to be a blue icon. So when you see the reports in Genesis, if you see a report with a blue icon, that's one of these. If you see one with kind of a more icon more specific to the report, it's going to be the standard reports. And then the last type of report is a report all on its own, and that's the label display report or the view label report. That one is under label and preferences, and it's not under the reports ribbon of Genesis. It's under the recipe ribbon. Like I said, it's just a single report, but it really is. It's going to show you all the things you need for your packaging. So the label, the ingredient statement, allergen statement. It's the highest quality or resolution label in Genesis. So if you're looking to export your label into, putting it onto packaging, setting it to a graphic designer or marketing person, this is really the report that you want to be on. And this one, they all add a little bit of customization. This one allows you to do some recipe specific images as well. So going back, we'll first dive into the standard reports. We'll jump into the Genesis software now. And the first thing we're going to do, I'll go through each different type of report, starting with preferences and then going into the actual report itself. I mentioned before under preferences, so under the home tab is preferences. The preferences are your overall user specific global preferences for Genesis overall. So it's going to affect everything you do inside of the application. And then you click on the reports tab. I was already there because I opened it a few minutes ago, but under the reports tab, that's going to be where you're going to be able to edit those reports, like the multi-column or the spreadsheet report. I got a few different things here. I'll kind of just do a quick rundown of all of the different options here. The general area has different things like font size, word wrap, how big you'd like it to be, the scale of the actual font itself. If you're going to show the icons, and the icons are, if I open up a recipe, my example recipe here, the icons are going to be the little things beside the names here. So like ingredients are the little green fruit. Recipes are the collection of items, same as that icon up there, just a little bit smaller. So that if you want to show or not show the icons inside of your reports themselves, you can check that box here. And let's take a look at that in action really quick. So spreadsheet report, again, we've got our icons here. You go into preferences, uncheck that box, hit OK, those icons go away. So if you're looking to print that out, it's maybe a little bit more user friendly than or more maybe professional if you wanted to show that report out. You can change your margins in your report when you're actually printing it out. You can change your header and footer as well. The header for these standard reports, there isn't one to start with when you first fire up Genesis. Some of the reports do have one by default, some don't. I've added one personally because I didn't want you to watch me try to find a file and save it in there, but I've got the header image is where you're going to put your header. And in these reports, the header doesn't show until you actually print it. So you can see inside of our report right now, we don't see that image that I've saved at all. It's not there in this report. That's just to kind of make these reports a little bit cleaner when going through them inside of the application. You know you're inside of Genesis, so you don't have to worry about seeing that. And then once we print it to like a PDF, then this header image that we see, expand it back out again, will actually print onto that PDF. And you can add some text as well. The header text will go just above the image. If you type anything in here, and you can control the font, you can control where that text is put. And then you also have an option for a footer. There's not an option for an image in the footer for these reports. It's just text. So if you wanted to type out anything that goes on the bottom of any of your reports or all of your reports, you can certainly do that as well. And then the last section we have here is this report section, and this section is really long. See a lot of different options here. And we'll go into this in a little bit more detail in a few minutes, but basically what this is going to do is going to, when we go into, actually I can show that really quick, and we'll go into maybe some more detail in a few moments. Inside of a recipe itself, if I go File, Print to PDF, it'll ask me where I want to save it first. And then we have the option to select what report sections we have. So this is more of like creating your own customized report if you wanted to put in the label display or the notes or the ingredient statement, things like that. So you can pick and choose which pieces you'd like to print into this report, and then when you hit print preview, it puts it into a single report. Going back over into our preferences now, The report sections here, if they're checked off, they will be automatically checked when you first go to do that print to PDF. So any of the ones here will just be automatically selected. And you can choose what order they're in. So if you wanted the allergen statement to be before the ingredient statement, you can reorganize that as well. So you have some control and customization on where these things go. If you wanted your label display to be at the very beginning, we can just push that all the way to the very top. Takes me a couple seconds there. And then it would be, the first page of our PDF would be the entire label display, and then the rest of the pages would be the rest of the information afterwards. So again, you have some control there over how you want it to be shown. And the reason why this area is so long is because you can do that for recipe, you can do that for ingredient, you can do that for our new function, the composite ingredient, and you can also do that for the menu label report. So there's a lot of different pieces you can do depending on which type of item that you're inside of. So again, a long list of stuff there, but you can expand or contract that depending on if you're wanting to just customize the recipe, just customize the menu label, or do all of them all at once. Let me get over into pull open one of my standard reports. Now we'll take a look at the multi-column report. As I mentioned before, within the software, when we look at these reports, the header and footer won't appear, only when we go to actually print it or export it. Like I said, that kind of cleans up the view, doesn't waste too much space inside of the program. And then if we wanted to then export it out with this report, the multi-column, if we wanted to print it to a PDF, we simply go to File, Print to PDF. Hit OK a couple of times. And we see that report come up, and we see that I've got my image on top of my report now, and it has that information. Some of these reports, and I think we get this question quite a bit of how do you export these reports, and some of it depends on which report you're looking at. Some of these reports are really designed to be printed to a PDF or a sheet of paper. The multi-column report is great for that function because it's really set up to be just the width and size of about a piece of paper. And of course, you can customize which nutrients you see. The MyPlate report, the single nutrient report, all reports that would logically fit onto a single sheet of paper. But I think the one that we get the most questions about is the spreadsheet report. If you're looking at a recipe with 100 ingredients and a recipe with 40 nutrients, that's enormous. and it makes it very difficult to maybe print it to an actual sheet of paper. Something like this maybe is more designed around being put into like Excel, more of a digital type copy or digital look for that report. So in that case, you wouldn't want to go File, Print to PDF. My print preview would be not the most friendly thing in the world. Instead, we can, if we right click inside of the report, we can just export the report either to a file, which saves it as a text file, which can then be opened into Excel, or just export the report straight to your clipboard. And then we can open up, say, Excel. Hopefully Excel opens really quick for me here. And then just Control V, paste it right in. And then we have the option to really customize this however we would like inside of our Excel, putting any sort of background, anything like that. So if you want to put it on like a website, something like that, really gives you the openness to customize that report. And then the last way to export it would be to export as text, kind of the same thing as right-clicking here. So you can either export here, right-clicking, or under the Reports tab here, oops, you can do export as text, kind of same option there. All right, so the next thing we're going to take a look at is the Reports Plus. Let's go back to, so those, like I mentioned before, are the ones with the blue icons. Inside of our preferences for Genesis, let me close out this report. If I can get it closed, there we go. Inside of the preferences of Genesis, that's going to be under Reports Plus here. There's a few less options here because they are a little bit more rigid in nature. That's just kind of the way they're built. You can do a header image within those reports. This image will show on your reports automatically. So if I close out my preferences, we can view one of these reports really quick. Let's see the label display standard one. This report will show the header image as it will be on. This is really more of a print preview. So it's showing the report exactly how it will be printed or printed to a PDF. Go back over into Reports Plus. You can override the size or the location of the image as well. So you have a lot of control over that. You select your image here, and this one does have a default as well. I don't think I mentioned that a moment ago. The ESHA header, which we do see quite often from people that use Genesis and maybe send their data either to their suppliers or to us as an example, we see that header a lot. So there's a lot of people that use Genesis that just don't go in and change their header to their own company. And Alicia's sitting over here laughing a little bit because she sees it all the time. But you can change that right here to just select a different file. And generally, if you have your own company header, usually it's designed to be that exact size and area. But if you need to change where it actually starts or the actual physical size of the image, you have a lot of control there. Again, you don't have to do that sort of stuff. Generally, that's what your graphic artists are for or your marketing team is for. And then you can also put some text in as well. So if you wanted to write some information in here that's more of just text typed in, you have that control as well. And again, you can control where that goes. And then the footer, there's no real customization from a entering your own data standpoint in there. It's really just the check boxes of if you want to show the date, the time, and the page number when you print it out. So you can check or uncheck those to show or hide that information. And then over into the report outside of our preferences. The big thing that we haven't really hit yet outside of the actual report itself here, of course, exporting these reports out. These reports do have a little bit more options than the other ones in terms of what file structure you would like to export it out. With this report, if you click this little icon that's an envelope with an arrow pointing into it, and if you hover over it, I believe it says export report, you can have the option to then select your different styles of file, whether it's a PDF or a Excel file, a Word document. So again, a lot of control there over exactly what type of file it goes, and then where it's going. Your disk file is just your C drive. So it's what you would generally want to select there. And again, you can control, select that, how you want to print it or export it out, and I'll pull all that data straight through. And like I mentioned before, these reports are great for inner office or exporting to maybe someone that's purchasing your products. Not the report that I would recommend if you're going to take this nutrition label and put it on a product. It's not that it's poor quality, it's just not quite as high a quality as like the label display is. Label display has a lot of perks that these reports don't. And again, these reports don't have a lot of customization that you can do kind of overall from just a user standpoint using it right now. I can't go in and uncheck a box to hide the ingredient statement or allergen statement. That said, if you do have something that you want a report to look an exactly specific way, and we don't have a report that looks like that, our consulting team does offer the ability to create customized reports. There is a fee to that. But if you'd like a completely customized report, we have that available. You pay us a small fee and then just work with one of our consultants to build that report out for you. And then, as I mentioned, as at our start here, our last type of report is that label display, which really is kind of the heart of Genesis to me overall, of being the kind of end goal of why you're using Genesis. It's getting that nutrition label, that ingredient statement, allergen statement, barcode, claims, to then be in the quality to export out to put onto your packages. So like I said, really kind of the heart of Genesis in its long goal. And going back into the program, under, again, clicking on home and then preferences, the options for the label is going to be under just label right here. There are a couple of preferences here that don't apply to the actual nutrition label or the label display report itself, and that's going to be the language and allergens. Those are more global type settings. Language will show or hide those languages in, when you create an ingredient. If you do the alternate name or ingredient statement, if you create an ingredient statement in a recipe, it'll show those languages in the ingredient statement window. So again, these two settings are a lot farther reaching than just the label display report, whereas the other sections here are really just designed around the label display report. You've got the font that you want the nutrition label to be set as by default, and that can be changed per recipe as well. You've got your header and footer images. I've used the Esha header again for this one. These will both be blank when you first start using Genesis if you're new to it. So this isn't something that we automatically add in. It's something that you have to add in yourself. And then this is an image that goes onto your label display for every recipe you ever make. And in a moment, we'll see that you can put an image for individual recipes as well. So if you want an image for just the one recipe, you have that option as well. And then the very top setting, which I kind of skipped over intentionally, is the default settings file. I'll come back to that in a moment, but I want to explain what the settings are, object properties, and how to create this file before I then come back here and select the file. And you can also select your DPI, your dots per inch, for your label as well. It's set default to 600 by 600. You have the option to select whatever you'd like though. And now inside of our recipe, we'll view our label. Like I said before, we've got our header image that I've added into my label display a moment ago. Get back over to my page of notes here. We've got our header image, nutrition label, all that sort of stuff. Unlike all of the other reports, all the other reports are fairly structured to where the information is where it's at. The label display, I can take my barcode and drag it wherever I'd like. So it's all free floating fields. You can move them wherever you'd like, customize it to however you'd like it to be seen. It's really up to you on how this report is completely built kind of from the ground up. And you can show or hide the fields here as well. We got our show box up here. You can select to hide the notes fields or the allergen statement, ingredient statement. You really have a lot of customization and control over if you don't want to show any of these specific items here. And then for the actual settings of this report, there's a lot of settings here that the other reports really don't have, and that's going to be under the Edit Label tab. The first four tabs we've got here, General, Format Options, Nutrient Options, Voluntary Nutrients, I'm really just kind of going to skip over today. We've gone over those four tabs in great detail over our previous webinars. It's more along the lines of customizing the nutrition label itself. Whereas we're looking at the actual report. So what I'm going to focus on today is the object properties. The object properties is going to give you a lot of the exact technical details of the individual fields inside of our label display. So if I expand out title, it'll show me what font I have the name of the recipe in, if I want to show it or not. If I want to draw a box around it, so if I click on draw frame and hit OK, I'll actually create a box around the name of the recipe. I can shorten that out a little bit so the box is a little more, makes a little more sense to the size of it. Again, just a lot of options here on where it's located. If I drag around that report and move it to a different place, of course, this location changes automatically. So I can either change the location by just dragging and dropping the items inside of the report, or telling it I want it exactly 1 inch from the top and half an inch from the left side. And again, you can continue to do that for all of the different pieces. And some of these will have different options, and some of the other ones, the label has a few more things like the nutrition facts, font types and sizes for the header, the nutrition facts words. You can change the font there. the size, the logical width of the label, stuff like that. So you have a lot of control there over kind of how the label's drawn, how it fits inside of the box that it's in. I'm not going to go into too much about logical width today, but it basically is how wide it's fitting inside of the box. I probably am not explaining that very well, but if you have any questions about that, of kind of making your label fit right, it would probably be more of a individual conversation with our technical support, and they're always here to help with those sorts of questions. So if you want to ask anything about the actual size of the label from these settings, give our support a call, and they'll give you really a good rundown of that information. And then again, moving down to each of the individual fields, I won't waste time with every single one of these, but they're all going to have those same sorts of font size, show, draw frame, things like that. The very last piece here that I haven't touched on yet is the apply settings to all existing labels button. There's one of these for every single one of these fields. So if I go to my title, it has that. If I go to my label, it has that. This is a use caution with this button. This button will apply the change to your label display for every single recipe you've ever created. So if you have 1,000 recipes in your database, it will update 1,000 recipes. And note that if you hit apply and you do want to do that, that's something you intend to do. If you have 10 recipes, it'll probably take a very small amount of time, a half a second to update that. If you have 1,000 or 5,000 recipes, it can take a little bit of time, so it might look like the application is maybe freezing or something like that, but it is, depending on how much data it has to write, it can take a little bit of time for it to do that. But again, use caution with these buttons. It can, completely change everything that you've created in the past. It's a great thing to have, so you don't have to manually update 1,000 items one by one. But again, use caution and make sure that that you know what you want to do. And if you have the installed Genesis software, you could even maybe have your technical team doing a backup of your entire database. That way, if you do want to go back, you can always revert those changes by restoring the entire database. So that's certainly an option too. And then the very last thing we've got here is apply all settings, and that will be all of the pieces: the header, footer, notes, title, label, all those things. So it'll apply all of the changes for all of the fields in this entire window here. And again, use caution on that one. And then the one thing that's here that you can only do here are the formula images. And those are going to be, I've got my picture of my salad. And don't take too much stock. I didn't mention this when we first got started. Don't take too much stock into my recipe in general, the nutritional information on it, the serving size, or the image. It's just an image that I randomly found that the ingredients probably don't even match up to what's actually in the recipe. So don't take too much stock into that being a real product or anything like that. It's not. It's just for example purposes. But you've got an image that we've put inside of this, and we put an image into your report. It'll just be kind of popped into the middle of your report, and then you can just resize it and position it where you would like it to go. And then from an exporting standpoint, there's a few different options there as well. We've got an export button at the top here that you can choose to export different pieces. You do have to make sure you highlight one first. These are both grayed out for me. If I select the ingredient statement and go to export, I can export the ingredient statement as text. So I could just paste it into something like Notepad. Do that right now. Let's open up Notepad and then just paste it in. And now we've got that text inside of Notepad, or of course Word, anything like that. You can also make sure that it saves the exact formatting or exact same sizing, so it's more of an image file. So you can do that as well. You can do that with the nutrition label, and you can either do that by clicking on the export and selecting these options, or by right-click on these, we have the export option as well. So you can select those, and again, you can do that for any of the individual pieces. Or if we right-click inside of the background, so if I, instead of right-clicking on the label, I right-click back here, we can export the entire report, and we can't do that as an image or text because of obviously it's a bunch of different pieces all rolled together. But we can do that as a vector PDF, and that really is the report or the the style of file that if you're looking to export this to a graphic artist, a marketing person, someone like that that's going to be using like Adobe Illustrator to really take these individual pieces and put it onto your packaging, that's the file structure they're generally going to want. It's really high quality. It's really easily editable. When they get into like Adobe, the individual areas here, the label and the ingredient statement are still individual, unlike a standard PDF. It really flattens it. So it's just one flat piece that you really can't edit anything with. With the vector, it has different layers. So again, really the highest quality option that you've got out there if you want. And for our example standpoint, I've done that, exported that one already to a vector, so we can just take a look at that. It should look about the same as when it was in the application itself, but we've just got the different pieces that have been exported out here. All right, and then we talked about it a little bit, but if you would like to create a more customized report, you want maybe the multi-column report, that information in a report, but you also want to see maybe we call this the food list, the information on how you added the ingredients in the batch, and maybe you want the ingredient statement too. We can do that by simply making sure that you have the recipe selected, so the recipe window open, not a different report. If we go to the spreadsheet report, it's not going to give us these options. It has to be when you have the recipe itself selected, or not just a recipe, ingredient, food menu, any of those sorts of pieces. Sorry, not food menu. It's not called food menu, it's the menu label. Once you have one of those things selected, we go to File and Print to PDF. Again, I'll have us say where we'd like to save this. But then we can go in and select our individual pieces here. And we kind of hit on that a little bit before. But again, we want the recipe info, which is the serving number of servings and weight and what groups it's in. The food list, which is, again, this area right here. And the food list can be modified in and of itself. You notice that I've got user code written in here as one of the columns. You can change what columns are shown inside this food list simply by right-clicking inside of your recipe and going to display columns, or going to home, preferences, and going to the food list entry columns. So now we've got that selected here. Almost forgot where that one was. So then you can then select if you wanted the price of your item selected or the cost, any of those sorts of things. Those will be added directly into this report or this view here, either from I'll add one in just so that we can see it change. Let's do cost. Either from just a function of Genesis standpoint, you want to see that column while you're actually working in Genesis, or using that report, print to PDF, and then saving that file with that information in it. We select our nutrients, which is kind of like one of the reports, but it'll just be more in a nutrient type view. Again, I won't waste time with going through every single item that you can do, but all the different types of reports, those are the standard reports that are in here that you can select, and the label display. So you've got all of those different options that you can select into a single big report. And then if I do let's see if I can grab my label display. So ingredient statement and label display. And then I'll also do print preview so we can look at it inside of the program here. But now we've got our header, our recipe info, our batch info, or our food list, nutrients, and then as we go down to the next pages, ingredient statement, and then the label display. The label display will always show as its own page. Everything else will kind of combine together as it can, obviously, with the room of the pages, as much as it can to shorten to as few pages as it possibly can. And then one thing that we were going to point out today, that was about all I had for our reports. One thing I was going to point out today that's kind of new to Genesis that we can take a look at, and when you're ready to view this webinar again, if you ever want to share it, on the Home tab of Genesis, we have an e-learning center button now. It's brand new for version 11.5. If you click on that, it'll open up our website and go right into our Learning Center. So now we can take a look at past webinars, video tutorials, cheat sheets, all that sort of stuff. And I believe when we first open this page, it should be in order of release date. And so when you open up that page, the first thing you'll see either tonight or tomorrow morning will be the webinar that we're watching today. And with that, I'll go ahead and hand it back over to Alicia. She'll do a little bit of wrap up, and then we'll get to some of your questions.
Thanks, Ben. Thanks for all of that detail. That was great. Thanks for demonstrating how easy you can drop information into Excel. I know I use that particular feature a bit. And thanks for creating that beautiful labeled display report. See how the nutrition facts panel, that wonderfully colorful picture, bring all of that information together in one easy to view form. That's wonderful. And yes, Ben mentioned that we see our logo out there on websites, and that's why I was chuckling, because as you could see, he had the ESHA Research logo right up there on top. It has our 1-800 number. So we get questions sometimes about a product on a manufacturer's website. And while I would love to help with those questions, I can't speak to a manufacturer's products on their website. So it's just helpful when you can change that logo, make it more of your own, and present information on your websites that are most helpful to your customers. So coming up, if you or your team would like additional instruction on Genesis, on the features and labeling related topics, we do have several training sessions coming up. These are all 2-day events at our Oak Brook facility, and they offer hands-on training with the Genesis R&D food software. Next week, coming up very quick, we have a Genesis professional and menu labeling training. This class has a focus on restaurant and menu labeling. And then in June, we have both professional level and advanced level courses. So you can see the dates there. And if you want to learn more and see the full training schedule, visit the ESHA website. You'll find more details about the trainings and location and a link to register there. And if you have any questions about your account, additional products and services, or you need support, you can contact us by phone or by the email and links here. And you can connect and keep current with the ESHA and industry resources via our LinkedIn community and news on the ESHA website with our blog and the ESHA newsletter. So we can get into a few questions. Several came in that were addressed right away, and we have a few that can be helpful to more folks, not as specifically. I'll take one, Ben. So a question about what report works best as a product spec sheet or a data sheet. And just from my perspective of what I've seen, of course, you want to look through all the reports and see what presents the information that you need to present to customers. And consideration is what information is suited for internal use versus external use. So the spreadsheet, you probably don't want to share the spreadsheet externally because it gives your formulas right there for everyone to see. Some folks do present information, a formula by ranges or percents to give folks an idea of ingredient statement order. So that can be helpful, but you probably don't want to present the spreadsheet to customers. I do see the multi-column report used quite a bit, and so you can have that in 100-gram amounts or per serving. And then we also see that labeled display report, just like Ben had with the nutrition facts panel, ingredient statement, a wonderfully colorful picture. And again, that might be more for retail purposes where you are presenting that information to consumers. So a rounded label would work well for that type of presentation. And another question that came in, could you just repeat about what is the current version of Genesis?
Absolutely. Version 11.5, which was just released within the last couple of weeks. Like I mentioned, I think we've got one wave left of people to notify for their update. So if you haven't gotten an update notification yet, you should receive that in the next couple of days, I ask our marketing person, very soon. And if you do have any questions, you can contact our technical support and they can assist with getting you that update information or helping apply that.
And what if I have version 11.3 installed? What should I do?
You can install right up to 11.5. You never have to do incremental updates. You can update straight up to version 11.5, or even if you're using version 9.12, you can go right up to the newest one.
Thanks. Question, can I display cost information?
Absolutely, and that was actually something that I think I skipped over in my notes that I forgot to get to. But just kind of overall, oops, that's our website. Overall changes to kind of your reports in general is going to be what nutrients you want to show on your report. If we look at, say, our multi-column report, we're currently looking at, if I had to guess, I would say the mandatory nutrients for the US label for the new regulations. That's exactly right. So with that, you can change your nutrients to view to show, if I want to show mandatory and voluntary nutrients. And select that, expands out our list. Cost is just another one of these nutrients. You don't think of it as a nutrient, but really kind of the way it's calculated, it is. I have one that says just with cost, so that has mandatory nutrients plus we got cost here. But it's also going to be, if we go into our modify section and hit edit, and we have a tutorial that goes through how to modify these nutrients. I'm probably jumping through a little bit quickly, but the nutrients that are on the right side of this window here, the nutrient selection window, are the ones that are going to be shown in your reports. The ones on the left are the ones that are currently not shown in your report. So we've got 175 nutritional components. We got about a little under 20 that are currently selected and 150 that aren't. And then once you're ready to use that list, generally you don't want to just hit save, especially if you're using like the US 2016 mandatory. If I go and modify this list, and I add in, say, water and ash, that's pretty common. Add in cost as well. We definitely don't want to just save over the top because that 2016 mandatory list is a very specific nutritional list. But if we do save as, we can then say 2016 US with ash, water, and cost, something like that. You see I've got a bunch of different ones that I've saved in the past. So now we've got our own, we've got the default that's already there, that's pre-built into the program, and we've got our own customized list. And there's no limit to how many different nutritional customized lists that you can build inside of the program.
Thank you. And if I may just add to that a little bit, you saw where Ben was showing the various nutrients to view, and some things to consider. Sometimes we report folate, and you can see that it comes in various units, or vitamin A comes in various units. And sometimes you need to provide not just the label nutrient unit, but also additional forms. So you can certainly create those sets to provide as much detail as you need.
Very important for ingredient suppliers, I would think, a lot of the time.
And then one last question, how do I change the recipe weight from grams to a different unit? So I think that's when you're looking at the recipe itself, that top section, change weight of the batch from grams to a different unit.
Absolutely, and that's going to be in our preferences as well. Let me close this report so we have to see it. So if we wanted to show kind of what our default measurement style is in general across the whole program, we go into preferences under general. Let's see if I can find it really quickly. We have our display weight here. We can select that between ounce, pound, gram, kilogram, milligram, microgram. So if we wanted it to be in ounces instead of grams, select that, hit OK, and then this now changes to 3.53 ounces per serving instead of the gram amount. Total weight in ounces instead of grams.
Thanks so much. Wonderful. That wraps up our questions. Thanks again, Ben, for showing all of that. Oh, one more.
One more thing I wanted to point out. When you change that, it won't change the ingredients inside of the recipe. So you notice my ingredients here, pound, gram, that's not going to change. Those are set based on how you enter them into the recipe. It won't change based on your preferences of the display weight. The display weight really just changes the overall, the preferences up here.
Awesome, understood. Just display only, it won't mess with your formula. So again, thanks. We try and really balance out that simplicity versus flexibility. So you can see all of these customizations and options can be selected to help you work with Genesis in the way that is best for you. Thanks for joining us today, and we'll catch you on the next webinar.